Is that working now? Yeah, sorry about that. We had a power cut overnight and it wiped a load of settings on everything. So it's knackered my OBS quite badly, unfortunately. But if you can hear me and see me, we are mostly going then. Yeah? Right, well, firstly, thank you for... I see you've started without me. Thank you very much for the level 3 hype train. Thank you very much to... we'll start this off. Thank you very much to Foxy for subscribing for 4 months. Thank you very much. And Ditch, 4 months, halfway to the stream baby. But we're going to be talking about the stream baby in a minute. Thank you also for the sub bomb for Sasola for Obliviorex, Chantinal and SMF Remixes, who is one of the best new DJs on Twitch. I would urge you to give them and Foxy a follow. Foxy also has been doing some music streams if she wants to shout herself out. So welcome in. It's good to see you in, Steve. I hope you're enjoying the holiday. Nice to see you here. I've got two. I should say why I'm a bit late is that I had to go and check why some loud music was playing. I wasn't really sure why. My neighbours don't really play loud music, and there was some loud music playing. So I went to see what was going on, and it turns out it was playing in my lounge because Google had started playing it, which raises the worrying possibility that my cat can now control all the Google devices by meowing at them somehow. So that's that's a development. Yeah, no. And then I spent all day trying to get my computer working again after the power cut. You're in the shower, excellent. After the power cut, wiped a load of it. So maybe she weed on it. Yeah. And I thought it wouldn't work then, rather than just played music, but it was absolute classic rock actually. So I mean, I can't complain too much. She's obviously been trained well. Hey King Cobra, oh thank you very much for the level 3 hype train. So we've got a few things for you tonight. We've got a debunking, which is a first for us. Then we've got, the bread and butter of true crime and a serial killer story. Then I've got an absolutely crazy injustice, which I think you'll enjoy in a sort of horrified way. And then finally, I've got just the most ridiculously horrible short news story at the end. So hope you enjoy all of that that's coming up. I have also breaking news. Ditch says he's found a 2 kilogram box of Quality Street on Amazon and ordered one. I have Amazon. Possibly don't send me a link. Now I'm trying to mentally work out how big 2 kilograms of Quality Street is. Is it the size of the cat carrier? Because I feel it's the size of the cat carrier. No. You're getting a beefy. King K was getting a beefy APC backup power supply since they've been having too many brownouts. Yeah, for some reason in the last month we've had 3. They're not even power cuts. The power goes off for like 3 seconds. Guess what? There's a fly. Sorry, that was a fly on the screen. I wasn't being attacked by a giant alien. And it's quite worrying because every time my computer turns off, it doesn't work when it goes back on again. So you have to fix loads of different settings. It's a puzzle. Yeah, I've been reading up. It's only in this area of I'm not going to dox myself. It's only been it's a thing. There's about 1,000 houses in this area of where we might live, that that keep getting affected by it. So the official explanation from the power company is they had to redirect power, and in the process the power went off for a couple of seconds, which is fine, apart from the fact that it resets all my alarm clocks, which is also not helpful. Oh, Steve says, yes, Alien Romulus is out soon. I've seen lots of really good reviews for it. Not that I really care about reviews, I'd go and see it anyway. Thelonious. Thelonious has got coffee. I was thinking about you, Thelonious, the other day, because I heard that the collective noun for rabbits is a fluffle, I believe. Now I know you've got cats, but I also know you have at least a rabbit, but you may have a fluffle. Yes, it just sounds like a UPS is definitely on the cards once I start getting regular incoming, because the power's been a bit of a joke in the last month. It's been a bit like the 70s around here. The other exciting news is I've repositioned CatCam. The less exciting news is obviously I haven't fixed the audio on CatCam, but you're here to see the cat. So if Polly sits where she's been sitting regularly for the last few months, you will see Polly. Obviously, now she's actually being asked to sit there, she won't. But we shall see. So there is a moved CatCam. I'm not going to put CatCam on now, because it is focused on my stomach, to be honest, and nobody needs to see that until there's a cat in the way. I prefer to think of it as a comforting cat shelf that helps me get close. Other news minus straight, yeah. Welcome to the 70s True Crime Show, where the power goes off halfway through. Yeah. Right, should we get into I won't witter on about things. We'll see if the cat. I'll get into this first story. So this is a real departure for us. I should also, I'll also say, in the last 24 hours, because I keep the bathroom window open. In the last 24 hours, a load of flies have come in, which is annoying. And I went on a massive raid spree. If you're not in England, I don't know if you know that raid is a fly killer, and that was fine. It killed them, but I may have used a bit too much raid and gone slightly trippy, which is a bad sign when you get into insecticide. So SMF Remix is not being funny, but please don't test the transporter pod with that fly in the room. Yes, we will not do that. Also, no, it's not good for cat. Well, to be fair, yes. Fortunately, I've been keeping her away from where I've used it. But fortunately, she runs away when I spray it, because she's a delicate flower. Until she wants to get into that cupboard, when she exhibits a level of violence I'm not comfortable with. You'd think I had all the dreamies in the world in that cupboard, given the way she attacks it. Maybe some fly paper. Oh, that's an idea. I'd forgotten that existed. I'll get on Amazon after this. Fly paper and 2 kilograms worth of Quality Street. Well, Steve, that is a statistic and a half to know. I have a feeling I may know what's attracting the flies, but we won't get into what certain fluffers have been doing. Oh, thank you, Tom Hanson. Welcome in. Thank you very much for the subscription, and for 4 months. Have we been doing this for 4 months? And you're all still here? That's amazing. Right, let's get. Yes, SMF Remixes is Steve's DJ account where he DJs pretty much anything and it's all banging, and I'm really enjoying it. He's partnered on it as well, and it's a great time. So do give him a follow. Do also give Alice Rocks a follow. That's his Fox's DJ account. DJing rock and metal. And there do seem to be a lack of rock and metal DJs, if I'm being honest. I was browsing last night just to see to see what's going on. Right, let me get. Oh yeah, also it's still very hot in England, so if I disappear for a while, it's because this room is oppressively stuffy. Because I can't open a window, because otherwise Fluffykins will dive onto the roof. And nobody wants this stream to be paused for half an hour while I have to go and get the ladder to get her back down again. Okay, you all do want that to happen, I know, but we're not going to have that happen. Okay. You know, you'd think this is hilarious. I'm having a minor heart attack. And everyone in the chat's going, he's up a ladder. Right, so we're going to do something different to start with. So normally on this stream, I do true crime that I research to get as real and as true as the best I can. Today we're going to start with something that isn't true, because we're going to debunk it. There is a story that's been going around many of the sort of horror and crime and other accounts on social medias. And it would be a brilliant story, because it is just like something out of a horror film. But much like horror film, it's completely made up. And I'm going to explain why it's completely made up as well. But this does mean I get to tell you the story anyway. So just for the moment, imagine that what we're doing is the spooky stream, and I'm going to tell you some nonsense, and then we'll lock back into real things. So the story is the Cambodian blood slave fraud. Sounds good, doesn't it? So a man who's the only released part of his name is Mr. Lee, had worked as a security guard in Shenzhen and Beijing. Somebody called Beef and Fire has bought in their alts. I mean, if you want to confess whose alt is Beef and Fire, A, that would be funny, and B, I presume that means we're round to your house for Beef and Fire. Ditch has no idea who that... It's Ditch. So he'd been a security guard in Shenzhen and Beijing before he was lured to an autonomous region in southern China by a fake job advertisement. Once there, he was abducted by a gang who took him to the China-Vietnam border and forced him and smuggled him at gunpoint across. At first, he was taken to Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And then he was taken to Cambodia by ship, where he was sold to another gang. They wanted to put him to work in an online fraud company, where he would essentially be forced to sit at a desk and con, presumably, the rest of the world. He was sold for $18,000, which feels like a lot. Not that you can put a price on a life, but like if there's a smuggling ring, $18,000 does feel a lot. But of course, this is fake, so we made that bit up. So, Beef and Fire says Beef and Fire is the world's best combination. Prove me wrong. Well, in certain circumstances, I mean, a herd of cows on fire is a problem. Ditch says no one's paying $18,000 for him. I think you're doing yourself down, Ditch. I think you're doing yourself down. I think you'd be really good at online fraud. That's probably not the point. Anyway, however, he decided he would refuse to participate in the online fraud scheme. He wasn't going to play along, which was a mistake, because they then said, well, we're going to orphan you back to your we're going to ransom you back to your family for much more than $18,000. And he went, I haven't got a family. And they went, right, well, either we chop you up and sell your organs for money, or we keep you as a blood slave. So what's a blood slave? Well, they tied him to a bed, kept him alive, and at least once every month they drained 800 millilitres of his blood and sold it to private buyers online. They drained so much blood from him that on the last occasion his veins were so knackered they had to drain blood from a vein in his head. There were 7 other men detained in the room. His blood type, unfortunately, was O, and that was quite valuable. He managed to escape from the gang with the help of a member of the gang and was rescued with his arms covered with bruises and needle marks and on the verge of death when he was admitted to hospital. However, Ditch says, with all this chocolate, I'm slowly turning myself into human Wagyu. I mean, that's something I could Google. I dread to think what happens if I see if that's actually happened. However, there is a bit of a problem with everything that I have just said. The National Police went and interviewed the man in hospital, and he was very ill. So they decided, well, we better go and catch the blood slavers. And they didn't exist. Turns out that this man had sneaked willingly into Cambodia for shenanigans. And when it looked like he was about to get caught, he decided the best thing to do was to turn himself in and make it all up. Now, you may be thinking, well, didn't I say he was really, really ill? Well, yes, he was. This is why he couldn't just leave. He couldn't leave because he became very, very ill. So obviously the best way to turn up at a hospital is to make up the most ludicrous story imaginable, because that's not suspicious. If he gets better, he is now in so much trouble that he probably won't be leaving Cambodia for a very long time, or his cell. So that story has been all over the social media. It's not true. The man made it up to disguise the fact he'd sneaked in and was ill. Stitch said he should have tried the old "I sat on that light bulb just after I had a shower" trick. When I say old trick, I don't mean that I've done it. I mean that it's a lot in hospitals. Hospitals have a lot of people who inadvertently fall or sit on. When I say people, I mean men. There are a lot of men who inadvertently fall or sit on certain shaped and sized objects when they just happen to be naked. This is a true crime channel, so obviously we don't need to do the rundown of the 10 weirdest things that have ever been found in a hospital in a man's bottom. But I have watched a rundown, and one man had several pounds worth of set concrete. Now, I don't know whether the full unbroken light bulb is better or worse in terms of how that happened than the set concrete. But fortunately, we don't have to worry about these things. It says batteries. I feel like batteries are just passé at this point. Right, so anyway, that was a bit. I mean, I don't know whether that's. If people are interested in me sort of debunking fake crime stories, yes, we have gone on a tangent. We're bringing it back now. We're bringing it back. If people are interested in me debunking fake stuff, let me know. Whether we just want to hear real stuff. The trouble is, if a load of fake stuff comes out, it sort of takes away from the seriousness of the real stuff, because nobody believes anything. If you can't believe anything, so, and that is a problem. You could do a copycat show. Oh, that's a good idea. That is a good idea. Yeah, copycat show. So, what would I do? I'd do the original and then the copycat, or would I just do a load of copycats? But that wouldn't really work, would it? If I hadn't explained just after the llama show. Yeah, the copycat show is a lot easier to do than the llama show. I'm sure I'll find some llama-based crime. I mean, let's face it, you can find pretty much anything on the internet, but llama crime is a little niche. I'm not really sure what that would do. I mean, a particularly violent llama that just attacked everybody. It's not. I suppose that would count. I feel like llamas are quite violent, aren't they? How about one where criminal detective techniques are debunked? We could certainly do things that people in time thought were genuine. So, for instance, there was I think it was the Kinterheifack murders, where all these German people had been killed. The police beheaded them and sent their heads to Berlin because somebody wanted to photograph their eyes, because they thought they would be able to bring out the face of the murderer, because they thought your eye kept the last image you saw. And the heads, nobody knows where these heads went. They don't even know if they were buried. They may still be in a cellar somewhere. But yeah, that sort of thing, exactly, dowsing. The spoilers, yeah. Literally just done half the show. We could certainly try that, actually. Yeah, that's... No, that will... It's just like, you've done it now, and I'm like, oh no, I'll do it again. Don't you worry, I'll repeat it again. So yes, that's a good idea. Yeah, that would be a good slot. Dowsing flies to collecting blood, yeah, exactly. We could do the old one about the animals in the cat in the nursing home detects death. It doesn't. It just that these people, as they were dying, they got a bit warmer, and the cat went, "Oh, you're warm. I'll sit on you." Actually, Polly's been sitting on me a lot recently, so you know this might be the last stream. It's full of use. It's very helpful. It's quite good. Look, I've moved the cat cam. Are you going to sit there all night? How about crimes involving a combination of beef and fire? From a certain perspective, Ditch, they all do. Most. I'm trying to work out how to get the Roman flaming pig story in. It's not a crime. It's military history, but it's so good. I'd love to get it in somewhere at some point. We shall see. Right, so we do have the main event is one of those bread and butter true crime things, an American serial killer. Right, so so if you're not really thrilled by the idea of an American serial killer, that's fine. There's a lot of them. I promise you that afterwards there is a truly remarkable, fascinating, and not that this is any less fascinating, but I'm a bit aware that there's this sort of idea that true crime is just people giving gory murder details about serial killers. It's far more interesting than that. So if you don't really into serial killers, just wait to see what's coming up at the end. It's a story that might make you really angry. Not that I want to encourage this sort of thing, but you've not forgotten pictures, have you? No, I actually have two pictures. I have two pictures. Obviously, the audio's knackered, which isn't ideal. So, but on the plus side, nobody wants to look at this man's face for longer than is necessary. So what I'll probably do is I'll put the pictures up and then turn them off quite quickly. Because it's like, I'm aware of the fact that like, having pictures is really good, but sitting looking at this man's face for 30 minutes when I'm going, and then he cut his head off, is not necessarily the best experience. But right, so the man I'm going to discuss is a man called Randy Kraft, and he is known as the Scorecard Killer. and I have been able to get a picture of the scorecard. So I've got the main thing. Thank you, Karen, the brilliant Karen Warbus, who is a singer on Twitch. Thank you very much for subscribing for 3 months. I hope you're enjoying your last night of holiday. Randy Kraft sounds like a porn director, yeah. Or a particularly weird Satanist. Bit of a niche joke, that one. Thank you for the follow, Beef and Fire. I now have 109 followers, which is brilliant. We have passed the 100. So I believe the next target is 500. I believe that's where we aim for now. So we start that process, which is excellent. Right, so Randy Kraft, the scorecard killer. So I'm going to begin one last soiree before sometime. Yeah. Yes, Ditch, because it gave me £2.50. Yes, definitely. Well, I appreciate you both being here, even though you're on holiday. I know there's probably a lot more fun things you could do, but never mind. So let me set a picture. So May 13th, 1983, just after 1 a.m. California. Thank you for gifting yourself a sub, Ditch, to Beef and Fire. I always appreciate any sub, even if it's you giving a sub to yourself. In many ways, that's just a special. It would be cheaper for me just to give you the £2.50. Yeah. Oh yeah, you said that we're going to go to Oldham. I think we should. Yeah. So, California Highway Patrol driving along on a normal night, and they noticed a vehicle swerving around, driving oddly. They suspected the driver was drunk. They often are. Polly likes it. Yes, Polly can have different countries. They signalled the car to pull over, and it did. But when the driver immediately got out and he poured the remains of a beer bottle onto the ground. Well, obviously the police are there thinking, bingo, we've got a DUI. The officers did a field sobriety test, which the man failed. So they planned to arrest him for drunk driving. However, as they did so, they noticed there was somebody else in the car. There was a male in the passenger seat. But he looked unconscious. They went over to... Isn't LD now in receivership? Is it? Oh, that's... Right, I'm doing a stream. I can't immediately Google that. If that's news that came out today, I've missed that due to all the other news. I will have to investigate. I don't think the one near me. I think the one near me is open, but that would be incredible. Can you imagine if the place where I lived spent like 5 years fighting to get an oldie, and then within a year it closed because they went bankrupt? That's just ridiculous. Hello, Tiga. Nice to see you in. So this man looked unconscious. They had a look in the car around the man, and there were empty beer bottles and a bottle of lorazepam. Well, they couldn't leave the man unconscious in the car, so they tried to wake him up and discovered he was dead. Not just dead, he'd been strangled with a belt, and his trousers were open, and his genitals were exposed. In the course of working out what they'd actually stumbled upon, they discovered that A, the driver was Randy Kraft, B, he'd just killed a Marine, and C, even more terrifyingly, in the car was a coded scorecard which seemed to be referring to the fact that this man had already committed 67 murders. And this is the true story of the scorecard killer. He was airing his potentials, yeah. I should point out, sadly, a lot of true crime is horrible men doing horrible things to women. But this time, this is one for the gentlemen to cross their legs. This is one for the gentlemen to, yes. Things happen. Gird your loins. Somewhat literally. Yes, thank you everybody who's in. Randy, yeah. Amazingly, I'm going to tell you a story that involves frequent references to the male genitalia about a serial killer called Randy Kraft. That's nominative determinism, isn't it? He was very randy. I think this is where we're going. Why do we always come to the aubergine, says Thelonious. That's because I don't really like to come on here and emphasise the really misogynistic ones. So we're doing one that's going to upset the gentleman. Penis taxidermist. No, now I'm sure I could find one of them. I mean, I was about to say there's probably a German museum. I think there's or is it Dutch? There's definitely a museum with loads of those in it, and it's somewhere in Europe. I can't quite remember. I think they're mostly all the animals though, and not just humans. But we shall see. Tom Hansen has confirmed that Aldi is not closing. Ditch says find a story about one rather than an actual one. Yes, yes, that's true. Yes, finding a real penis online is a different form of internet usage that I do not really do. Right, so who was Randy Kraft? Now you've pointed this out, how am I supposed to do this? And keep us straight. Right, we're just going to refer to him as Kraft from now on, okay? I'm not going to sit here and talk about Randy for an hour. You lot. Oh, it's Asda that's in trouble. Ooh. Right, so Randy Kraft, hereafter just Kraft, was born on March 19th, 1945 in Long Beach, California. This story is almost entirely set in California, with a bit of a move into Delaware and Oregon and somewhere else. Steve says people will always need food, just not from Aldi. I'm surprised Waitrose isn't in trouble, given the prices the last time I went in a Waitrose. I should point out that Waitrose near me is the only place I've ever found, not online, that stocked my favourite beer. Anyway, his father had been working in the Douglas Aircraft Company during the Second World War, and his mother also worked several jobs to keep them afloat. He had 3 older sisters. His father was distant, but everyone else loved him. His intelligence was noted early on, and he took accelerated classes in school, although he did have a habit of injuring himself in accidents. He hurt his head at one point. Maybe this is why. And as a teenager, he became fascinated with politics, and in high school founded the Westminster World Affairs Club. Now, as I was in school, if you founded a political club, you would not be popular, no matter what that club was. In fact, you'd be bullied out. But possibly where he was clever and light. He was very far right in politics. That's not a judgment, because we'll come to something in a minute. But he dated several girls, although by this point he knew he was gay. He was just sort of hiding it. He was good at tennis, and he played the saxophone. Yeah. The smoking party would have been popular. This is true. After graduating, he joined Claremont Men's College in California, read economics, and joined the Reserve Officers Training Corps. He demonstrated in favour of the Vietnam War and went to rallies for the Republican presidential candidate. However, midway through college, he had a complete reversal. He dropped his support for the Republicans because he felt he'd inherited that from his parents, and became something of a major figure in the local Democrat organisation. Yes, SMF Remix says Waitrose is essentially 500 million quid for a tomato out of date in its late 40s. Some of the staff gave it a name, Colin, and it says I'm currently saving up for Colin. The sad thing is, if Waitrose put an advert up tomorrow with a cuddly tomato called Colin, they would A, sell out within an hour, and B, be worth 500 million quid on eBay in an hour. Not that I'm bitter about that carrot. Not only did he completely chase political allegiance, he started working in a gay bar, slept with male prostitutes, was arrested in 1966 for lewd conduct when he propositioned a man who turned out to be a copper. The charge was dropped as it was his first offence. He started using drugs, mainly prescription medications, and a heroic quantity of speed. He frequently drank and gambled, was rumoured to like bondage, and initially failed his degree and had to retake it to graduate. Given this lifestyle, the obvious future choice for him was to join the Air Force. He became an airman first class. However, he decided he should reveal he was gay to his parents, who, after some tension, came to terms with it, and revealed he was gay to senior officers, who, after some tension, threw him out of the Air Force. So he once again worked as a bartender. And then Steve says you may go and laugh out loud because he was gay and played the saxophone. You know, this is what I shouldn't really criticise other true crime shows, right? But I do this one partly because I don't really like the ones that are thunderingly ponderous and depressing and it's just not me. And this is where I feel like I've got a niche. No offence if you like that, but if you do like that, you're not watching this, are you? Let's face it. So he started to turn into criminality in March 1970. It actually did. It's funny you say that. Steve and I were talking about the instruments of the eras the other day, and we thought the synth was the instrument of the 80s. But Ditch says the saxophone is the instrument of the 80s. Strong choice. Interesting. You should weigh in with that. Anyway, so his turn to criminality began in March 1970. Kraft met a runaway at Huntington Beach. He was 13, had just left home, and was looking for some fun. Kraft said he could stay at his house, and he knew a woman who would be interested in sleeping with Fancher. Fancher said, "This sounds like a good idea," and went to Kraft's flat. He was offered a load of drugs, which Fancher willingly took. Unfortunately, it was a colossal amount of drugs, and Kraft beat him up and raped him, and then went to work. Fancher managed to escape, ended up in hospital having to have his stomach pumped before the pills killed him. He refused to admit he'd been sexually assaulted to police. He just told them Kraft had lured him to his home, given him drugs and beat him. The officers searched Kraft's room and found the drugs, and many more drugs that he shouldn't have had. But unfortunately, they didn't have a warrant. So he was never charged. Bit of a thing to forget. I feel like there's an awful lot in these cases of, oh yeah, we forgot to get a warrant. And you do think, surely that should be quite high up on the list of things that you should remember, given that you do it a lot. Anyway, Kraft had a lucky escape. But sadly, this didn't put him off. If anything, this emboldened him. By 1971, Kraft was working as a forklift driver and in a relationship with a man called Jeff Graves, who he met by studying at Long Beach State University. In 1971, Kraft also began a campaign of murder that would last until 1983. At one point early on in this era, he told a friend, "There's a part of me that you will never know." Sadly, we do know, and it's that he killed 67 men, aged from 13 to 35, but mostly around the age of 20. The details on some of these victims are vague, because we're not quite sure who some of them are. We only know he killed that many because of the scorecard. In fact, as you will find out later on, he may have killed many more. These 67 is a minimum. He was only convicted of 16 murders, but that was enough to put him on death row, so, you know, that's fair enough. Friends noted he had a weird habit of disappearing for days or locking himself in his room for days. He had a stern manner and a quick temper. Tegan was cat herding in the rain, as I do. Yes, I sympathise, Tegan. I do sympathise. I was late to the stream 2 weeks ago because I was literally chasing my cat around outside to try and get her in. I failed. I could not get the cat in. She just came in on her own when it started raining. So, you know. I should point out, Polly has spent the greater part of the afternoon popping in for a cuddle and harassing me. But now I'm actually on a stream with a cat cam. She sat in that doorway refusing to participate, which I think is because she's in a mood because of she's not got the house set up quite the way she wants. Steve says, "Sounds like me in Discord at 4 a.m. What are you saying, Steve? We'll just drop back to the music conversation. There was hardly a smutty moment in an 80s movie that wasn't accompanied by a saxophone. Fair enough. Steve says the synthesizer and shoulder pads came as a team. Indeed. Right, so Kraft's favourite people to kill were US Marines. Kraft, in fact, let's do it. I will now show you a picture of Robert Kraft. I'm going to go silent while the picture was up because of the power cut. I haven't actually put the mic on the photo, so just get a good look at this chap and then I'll take his face off. Not in a Nick Cage way. Karen is rolling around here, Steve says. So that's Robert Kraft. He's not a large man, he's a very slight man. You may then be wondering how he killed a large amount of Marines. Well, what he would do is he would find these men alone as they were often hitchhiking or travelling or waiting for someone, and he would offer them a beer. He had a cooler of beer in his car. They would inevitably accept. Unfortunately, he had put prescription sedatives in this beer. He would fill them full of beer and sedatives until they could put up no resistance. Yes, right. So Steve's looked at this picture and gone, "Blimey, I wouldn't trust him in my bicycle." Sadly, this man had an almost magnetic ability to convince men to trust him, which, given the modern way, he looks suspicious as all hell. It's the moustache, isn't it? It's the stash. That stash was a different signifier in the 70s and the 80s to how it is now. It's men like him that have ruined that moustache. So there's one benefit. Anyway, once he got them under the influence, he would tie them up. He would torture them. He would sexually abuse them. He would kill them by suffocation or bludgeoning them. He would often burn them with a car lighter. Sometimes he would shove things up their bum. Sometimes he would cut off their genitals. Gentlemen. And then he would dump the bodies near major roads. Yes, he took absolute... Right, so this man went on a long killing spree and didn't give a hoot as to the bodies being found or any sort of that discovering stuff. And he wasn't caught for ages. And as you'll find out, well, as you've already found out, he was only caught by accident because somehow, and we still don't know why, he'd actually drunk some of his own drug-laced beer at that point and was veering about. Steve says, men like him either went two ways, serial killers or joined the village people. Send your complaints to Polly the Cat at shedoesn'ttake-no-trouble.com. When Kraft was arrested, the first word on his scorecard was the red stable. Would anyone like to see the scorecard now, or shall we save the scorecard till a bit later? Right, we'll save the scorecard for a bit. You will now have to sit through quite a lot. Yeah, sadly, given that this man basically was a prolific murderer for so many years and didn't get caught, there is quite a bit of me mentioning just a long series of people who died. So, yeah, sorry. Steve says he did an Alexander the Great caught with his trousers down. So when Kraft was first arrested, the first code on his scorecard read stable, just the one word, stable. The scorecard was written in a code that it took a long time to work out. So the first thing on his scorecard was stable, so it's presumed this is his first murder. Looking back, police realised that at the time a man called Wayne Duquette, who had worked at a gay bar called The Stable in Kraft's area, was found dead on October 5th, 1971. When his body was found, it was so decomposed, all they could work out was that he had alcohol poisoning. So it was dubbed a death from excess alcohol, even though the corpse was found naked. I mean, I'd have been a bit more suspicious, but that's just me. It's believed that he was Kraft's first full murder victim. And now we move through his crimes. I should give you a bit of a content warning on this. There's some grisly details. Ditch says, I used to get naked to drink, that's why I had to stop. Yeah, exactly. With de rigueur. Especially in especially if next to a motorway as well. In fact, if you think that's weird, we're going to get to an even weirder one. We're going to get to an even weirder one where the police were like, oh, it's a drug overdose. Then who wrapped him in a load of plastic bags? Anyway, got banned from a load of pubs. Yeah. So Edward Moore was last seen leaving Camp Pendleton, where he was a Marine. In 1972, his body was found on a freeway. His body exhibited many of the signs that police would use to piece all these murders together. He'd been bound, beaten on the head, strangled, bitten. One of his socks had been shoved up his bum and the body thrown from a moving car. The next victim was found February 6, 1973, next to a freeway again, bitten, strangled, and a sock shoved up him. Sadly, we still, even with the benefits of modern technology, do not know who this man was, although we are certain Kraft did it because of the sock. Kevin Clark was 17 when he was found dead. In 1973, he had been raped and somebody had cut his genitals off. July 28th saw another still unknown victim's body found dismembered across 2 counties. The head was in Long Beach, the left leg was on Sunset Beach, and everything else was in San Pedro. Ronnie Wybe had been bound, hung off something and strangled. He also had a sock in him. Now, Ditch says, what was the use of the sock? Yes, I've looked into this. The police believe that the sock, as well as tissue paper, which was often stuffed up here, was to stop the body leaking while he moved it and dumped it. Or it could just be some weird kinky thing because he was a maniac. Vincent Mestis was found dead in San Bernardino Mountains, December 29th. His hands cut off under the sock once again. The hands were never found. A spiky thing had been shoved down his penis. In 1974, Kraft killed three, if not five people. Malcolm Little and James Reeves were dumped by freeways again. Both had tree branches shoved up them. Roger Dickinson had the bite marks. He'd been raped and strangled. Two other victims were dumped by freeways. Thomas Lee had been strangled, and Gow Cordova, who died of an overdose of booze and Valium. John Lewis was in high school when Kraft murdered him on January 3rd, 1975. He was strangled and a wooden surveyor stake was shoved up him. However, police studied the marks on the beach where the body was found and concluded that they had two people doing this killing. We will come back to that. All the men are wincing and covering their crown jewels right now. Ditch has gifted a tier 1 sub to Bumsock. I'm going to say, if Bumsock comes into this channel, I don't think he's going to be thrilled by what's happening to the Bumsocks, but we get that. Now, you may be thinking, why am I reading out all these specific details? Well, it turns out that in California, in this period, something very weird and rare was happening. Randy Kraft was killing gay men and dumping them by major roads. It turns out there was two other men doing the same thing. Police were faced with dozens of dead men and were trying to work out, is this one killer? Is this two killers? Is this three killers? What on earth is this? So they knew there was at least one serial killer, but most people had begun to not. This is why they tried to filter it out. So a guy who was arrested, one of them was eventually caught. Both of these men were known as the Freeway Killer. So I'm not calling Kraft the Freeway Killer. We're going with his other name of the Scorecard Killer. The other Freeway Killer was caught, and he used to shoot people, and Kraft didn't shoot people. And this is how they started to sort of work out that they had multiple people. And this is one of the things that vastly complicated the story. Right, yes. Ditcher said instead of the Scorecard Killer, he could be the Bumsock Killer. All we need now is an Then, however, Kraft put himself firmly on the police's radar. He made a major error from the point of view of somebody that doesn't want to get caught. On March 29th, 1975, Kraft took two young men called Keith Crotwell and Kent May into his car. He gave them beer and Valium, beer-laced Valium, and drove them around until they'd passed out. He pulled back into the same car park and pushed May, alive and essentially unharmed, onto the ground and drove off with Crotwell. That was the last that was seen of Crotwell. His skull was found on May 8th, and his body was found 6 months later. However, when Kraft had dumped May, one of the boy's friends had seen the vehicle, and the friends, realising that Crotwell was now dead, went and searched for the vehicle. They found it less than a mile away. They gave the details to the police, who called in the registered owner, Randy Kraft. Kraft was interviewed on May 19th, 1975. At first he said he'd never met the boys, but then he said, well, I had met them. I got them into my car. I gave them drink and drugs. Then I dumped May in the car park and I drove off with Crotwell. But the car got stuck. I went to get my partner, who confirmed this. We'll come back to that. But Crotwell had left of his own accord. I don't know what was happening. Obviously, as an excuse, it's a completely awful one, and detectives didn't believe a word of it and wanted to press a murder charge. Unfortunately, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office refused, saying the only evidence they had so far from the autopsy of the skull said that Crotwell had drowned by accident. Kraft faced no charges and was free to carry on killing. In many, many serial killer stories, in fact I would venture most, there are opportunities to catch the killer before more people have to die. And in the case of Kraft, this is it. But he wasn't caught. So he didn't kill again until he felt safe, and his life began to go through some problems. He was now getting severe migraines, bad stomach aches and insomnia. He was now taking large amounts of the pharmaceuticals to ease these. And he was arrested for lewd conduct in a park. Then he was fired, but he got a new job. He had discovered computers and was actually a brilliant computer programmer. Ditchers just referenced one of Kraft's other crime, namely that they ruined Cadbury's. That is a very niche chocolate joke, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all enjoyed that. Complaints to Kraft for ruining Cadbury's. And whoever thought it would be a good idea to reduce the size of a chocolate bar by a third and put the price up. Yeah, okay, so what I've learnt from this stream, Steve, is to raid the flies out of existence about an hour before the stream. Because yeah, it's funny. It's just the time of year it is, like nothing happens, and then one day an army of flies turn up. In 2 hours. The only way to end this stream is for G-Man to step into a transporter pod. Yes, perhaps we might leave that in favour of other people. You're lucky I had a Daddy Longlegs getting in. What's wrong with Daddy Longlegs? They're lovely. I'd much rather have a Daddy Longlegs than a fly. I'm sorry for the Daddy Longlegs slander. Anyway, Kraft killed Larry Walters on Halloween, but he unleashed his penitent rage on Mark Hall on 1975. He drove him to a canyon, tied him to a tree. Oh, hello Dietzland, nice to see you. Hello from Netherlands. I hope I've pronounced Dietzland right. If I haven't, I apologise. Hope you're enjoying things. So he cut this man's genitals off and shoved them up his bum while he was alive. Burned him with a lighter, burned his eyes out with the lighter, carved him with a broken bottle, and killed him by stuffing earth into his throat. The reason why I have focused on the particular details of this case is because Mark Hall would, in some tiny, insignificant way, achieve a revenge. Because when the police investigated Mark Hall's killing, they discovered fragments of a broken bottle of Winner's vodka. Police pieced the fragments together, which allowed them to get 2 usable fingerprints. They had no one to compare them to yet, but at Kraft's trial, these would be vital evidence. It's explicit, direct evidence that he had killed this man. Outside of the murder, Kraft split with Graves and started a relationship with teenager Jeff Seelig. Jeff Seelig would survive this whole incident and would be proved to have nothing to do with the murders, or indeed have no inkling of the murders. But he would later describe himself from their abusive relationship as the only survivor of the scorecard killer, which is pretty egotistical, considering what happened to everyone else. Again, he carried on killing. He called Paul Fuchs. His name was on Kraft's scorecard. Now, Paul Fuchs went missing. He was definitely on the scorecard, but no body was ever found. So it's assumed Kraft killed him, but we don't know how or why. It should be pointed out that police had at this point arrested one of the other freeway killers, the more famous freeway killer, a man that shot people and dumped them in plastic bags by the road. And they were, I don't think they were surprised, but they were certainly disheartened when they managed to arrest one serial killer and the killings carried on going. They definitely knew they had another one, but at this point nobody had attached Kraft to it, despite the vast missed opportunity. He killed Marine Scott Hughes, who was dumped from a moving vehicle. They killed Marine Richard Keith 8 days later. Although the drugs and alcohol he'd already taken when he killed him, he killed Keith Klingbeil, he killed Richard Crosby, and he killed Michael Inderbeaton. And the killings carried on going. I think you've got enough sense of what he did and what's been going on. I don't need to give you I don't think any more of those descriptions. I think you've got the sense. He carried on killing and killing and killing. He took a lot of photos of his victims. On particular, Marine Robert Loggins was found posed naked. Oh yeah, don't worry, Ditch. We'll get to that. Robert Loggins was found posed naked in photographs. It's unknown whether he was unconscious or dead. Anyway, so he kept going and going and going. One of the things he did, he would go to Oregon on business trips, and while he was in Oregon, he would kill people there. As he carried on murdering people, the Oregon police had a realization. They began to look at all the dates and the locations, and they decided this man didn't live in Oregon. This man must be coming and going from Oregon, but he's at these are near hotels frequented by businessmen. What if this was a businessman or some sort of professional? So what the Oregon police started to do is study lists of every hotel resident, every airport resident, every car hire. And although Kraft had used fake addresses, they got in contact with the Californian police and said, hey, look, you've got killings just the same as we have. Is this somebody that travels from your area to ours? And they began to work together to dial it down. Now, how close they were is a matter of dispute. They may have been a year or two away, but they were making progress. Until that fateful day when Kraft picked up Marine Terry Gramble and somehow, somewhat accidentally, managed to drink some of his own laced booze and get picked up by the police. So you, in a very real sense, this vastly prolific serial killer was caught purely by luck. New merchandise, tea towels embossed with killing is business and business is good. And now available in the foyer. Yeah, that is the weird thing about true crime. But don't worry. And then they found the scorecard, and they began to realise what they had found. They had found a man who was a prolific serial killer, 61 entries. Well, who were these people? So what do I say when I mean a code? Well, firstly, let me show you the scorecard. I should point out we're through the grueling list of murders now. We're going to get into him being arrested and charged and all this sort of stuff. So this is the scorecard. Okay, so what you can hear me, yeah? So what you have here is 2 rows of a neatly written text. Each row is a murder, but the words don't really mean much. So let me give you an example. Some of the victims had their names, but just by their initials. Others refer to the location where the crime took place. Others are more obscure. There was an entry called Marine Head BP. The police worked out this was Mark Marsh, a Marine who was decapitated near Buna Park. Entries that go 2 in 1 Beach refer to his double murders. No one knows to this day who the victims of 2 in 1 Hitch and 2 in 1 MV to PL actually refer to. Therefore, having studied this list in great detail, they believe Kraft killed 67 people. And that's the list. Obviously, Kraft was tried. He was tried for 16 murders. The investigations interviewed over 700 people. Kraft at this point was saying he had picked Gamble up, and then suddenly he'd had a medical emergency. He was swearing because he was trying to help Gamble. And if the police had found him and done CPR sooner, Gamble might have survived, which is a defence that's interesting for the blatant failure to explain why the man had been strangled with his own belt. Anyway, the trial began in 1988. They used photos, possessions and forensics from Kraft's home. Oh yes, I've skipped a bit. In the car, when they took Gamble out of the car, they discovered that the passenger seat carpet was covered in blood. Gamble was bleeding from nowhere, so obviously they sent that carpet off to get forensics. And under the carpet they found a large cache of photographs. These photographs are all of unconscious men in pornographic positions. They're all his victims. I say unconscious. We don't know whether these men were already dead at that point. Anyway, the fingerprint that was found was used to nail him to that crime scene. They found possessions of various victims in his house. They found the photographs. Kraft said he didn't do it, and the defence argued this was all circumstantial, and the scorecard was merely planning for a surprise party. Because of the scale of his crimes, the trial took 13 months. The cost was, it was the most expensive trial in California at that point. And he was found guilty and sentenced to death. The judge said, "I can't imagine doing these things in scientific experiments on a dead person, much like someone alive. Many of the jurors took years to get over the trauma that the trial inflicted on them." Despite all of this, his sister Doris was unable to believe it, saying, "We believe he is innocent. We didn't believe he did a fair trial." Nonsense. Anyway, so he was convicted. He was convicted and sentenced to death in 1989. He is still alive. He has managed. This is great. Looks up at the attic in your holiday cottage. See, I was going to be nice, Steve, and not mention that. I was also going to be nice and not send you the list of essential things you must check in a holiday property. Yeah, I'll leave that there. Anyway, so he has spent many, many years and cost the government millions and millions in stretching out appeals and various things. As the jury foreman James Little pointed out, he's lived longer in prison than the whole lives of most of the kids he killed. He also have the nerve to complain about the people that write to him. He'd like some pen pals for some genuine conversation, but he complained that all he gets are mad fans and true crime writers. What's wrong with true crime writing? Anyway, however, there's a bit of an unsolved problem here. I can't tell you. Yeah, they caught him and they put the serial killer in prison, because there's a problem. He had an accomplice. He had at least one accomplice. Remember John Lewis in 1975? His body was found in water. There were 2 sets of footprints from where a car had been parked to carry him into the sea. Eric Church had been killed. Kraft had photos of his body in Kraft's own car, but the DNA from the semen taken from him wasn't Kraft's. Police doubted that a man who looked like this, with this build, was able to throw very large men out of a car at full speed without crashing it. He had a large number of self-developed photos, but he had no darkroom or equipment. Basically, there were other people involved. Police actually declined to prosecute Kraft for several murders because they clearly showed two people were culpable, and it would muddy the case. Kraft would be able to go, well, it wasn't me, it was clearly somebody else. So who was it? Well, suspicion fell strongly on Kraft's former partner of 5 years, Jeff Graves. He was the alibi for Kraft during the Crockwell investigation, so he had lied about that at least. However, when police had arrested Kraft and went to question Graves, Graves told them, "I'm not really going to pay for it, you know," and he died shortly of AIDS afterwards. This does, of course, leave a substantial part of Kraft's career. Now, Dennis McDougall wrote a book about Kraft called The Angel of Darkness. It is the essential Bible for Kraft studies. Kraft was offended and sued him for $62 million, claiming it ruined his reputation. Now, I've read a lot. I've read this book, and let's face it, there's absolutely nothing you could put in a book that would ruin this man's reputation further than he has. Steve says, forgot Foxy's Olympic sausage throwing sport. Anyway, the suit failed, but this, if anything, drove McDougall on. In 2000, he published a confession from minor criminal Bob Jackson. Jackson said he helped Kraft kill several people. He also said that the scorecard wasn't all the murders, it was only Kraft's favourite, and that he had killed 100 people. However, his confession is slightly doubtful because after police investigated him, they talked him into a mental hospital. Not the most reliable ending. Since the trial, yeah, he had a solid cold career before. Since the scorecard, since the trial, let me start that again. By the time of the trial, 43 of the 61 entries had been deciphered. Since then, 3 victims had been traced. Navy white was James Cox, a man who was hitchhiking in his white Navy uniform when he went missing. Iowa refers either to Orwell Stewart Jr., whose body was found in 1974 but not identified until 2012, or Michael Schlicht, whose body was found in 1974 but not identified until 2023. Harry County possibly refers to David Sant, who was found stabbed to death in the stomach and whose body was left in a kneeling position as if committing Japanese ritual suicide. The search is still on to find the other victims. And that is the scorecard killer. Oh, as Ditch points out, the bum sock killer. Now, I mean, if you were browsing Amazon... Oh, wow, thank you for gifting a gift sub, Steve, to LightningLol19. Thank you very much. If you were browsing Amazon, would you buy a book titled either The Scorecard Killer or The Bum Sock Killer? To be fair, I'm not sure you could actually get that title past Amazon. No. Right. Right. Well, we've got 2 other stories tonight. One is a lightning quick, extremely bizarre story. If I was buying it for you, it would be the bum sock killer. Yeah, that's true. The bum sock killer's got Christmas joke gift written all over, hasn't it? That's the mark. Not. I mean, you know, not to make a joke of everything we've just discussed. Oh, well, never mind. It's too late now. Sorry about that, T-Gun. The auto mod picked up the word crotch and was a bit, but I've let it through because it's fine. You know, everyone is staring wide-eyed in silence and holding their crotch, including the girls. Yeah. I do feel a bit weird doing those sort of stories because they are, you know, They're the bread and butter of true crime, but they're not necessarily an entertaining listen, are they? Whereas I think the next two stories are certainly going to fire you up. I remember an Automod on another channel didn't like the word dinosaur. Had whoever programmed that had a particularly bad run-in with a Velociraptor? Was he just burned out on Dino Crisis? He tried to do the Dino Crisis speed run and then banned all word of it when he went over to just play Animal Crossing for the rest of his life. Right, chat. I have a full story. No idea, but we were memeing on it for hours. I can imagine. Automod can be funny. Yeah. Dinosaur. So we have a very short, very bizarre one we can do now. That's a bit prehistoric, as if. Or we can do the sad case of Rachel Hoffman, who there's no serial killing in Rachel Hoffman. Rachel Hoffman is where people who think they're doing good things don't think hard enough about what they're doing. Oh yeah, Ditch says, as if socks in the bun wasn't bizarre. I know, right? I've got an even more bizarre one. We're going to have to do that now, aren't we? We're going to have to do that now. This is a very short one, but this is a genuine piece of news, right? This is real. So, Tiffany Albert's 15-year-old son, obviously I can't give you his name because it's protected for very good legal reasons, so we're going to kill him, Master Alberts. So Tiffany Albert's 15-year-old son, Master Alberts, had to go into hospital to undergo cancer treatments. He went to Riley Hospital for Children in Indianapolis. While he was in there, he began to get very ill. You may be thinking, well, that's explainable. Well, no, this is the problem. Because he began to get fever, vomiting, and diarrhea. They did the bloods, and they discovered that he was getting a bacterial infection and sepsis from things normally found in poo. They could not explain how a cancer patient would be getting poo-related illnesses. So what they did, they put a camera in his room. Would you like to guess how Master Alberts had become ill with sepsis and bacterial infections? He had become ill because his mother had been feeding his own feces into the IV bag. She had collected some, she had kept it in a bag on the sink, and when nobody was looking, she was sticking it in the IV. You may be wondering, maybe you are wondering, why would you do that? It turns out Tiffany Alberts was completely batshit crazy and did not like the level of treatment she was getting, and hoped that if her son got iller, he would be moved to a different unit and get better treatment. And she thought the best way to do this was to half kill him. Obviously, she was arrested. She was tried for an attempted murder. She wasn't found guilty of attempted murder because obviously she wasn't actually trying to kill him. She was found convicted of 6 counts of aggravated battery and has been sentenced to 7 years in prison. Ditch is pointing out the obvious problem, which is how do you stick fecal matter in an IV and people not notice? Oh yeah. Yes, Munchausen by proxy very well could be involved in this. Yes. Yes, Monkeypox is on tour in Sweden. I have their first 3 albums. I'm very excited for when they play Wembley. Obviously, we're not calling it monkeypox. We have to call it Mpox. But much like Twitter, we're not going to. Alright, well, that was a very quick but incredibly bizarre story. I was about to say a bit of a palate cleanser. That's possibly the least appropriate thing I could say at that point. Right, we have done an hour and a half, but we are going to do another story because it's a terrible, terrible story, but I want to use it to illustrate a much, much broader point. Fortunately, it's not a very long story. Monkeys hired some lawyers to change the name as bad PR. Yeah. The Planet of the Apes team have been on it to change that. Mpox, M people. Oh, well, that's true. Right, so we'll get into this, and this will be the last one tonight. So Rachel Hoffman was just a normal young American woman. She was born in Florida. Monkeys are different from apes, big fella. I don't think monkeypox cares. She was born in Clearwater, Florida. Had a normal upbringing, which involved ballet, horses, and music. Graduated Florida State University with a degree in psychology, and had planned to do both an MA in mental health support and go to Arizona Culinary School. Like many normal young Americans, she was a cannabis user, and she acquired a minor drug conviction. She'd been caught with 25 grams of cannabis in her car during a random traffic stop. As her mother would later say, my daughter was stopped going 8 miles over the limit with less than an ounce of pot, and this got her killed. So, there were some other drug issues she ran into, all to do with weed, bit of ecstasy and all that sort of stuff. So the police said to her, look, if we charged you, you would face jail. Or she could act as a police informant. If you carry on selling drugs and report who you sell them to us, we won't charge you. At the time, this 80% of drug cases in the US involved the sort of informant Hoffman now was. Young people who had run into a drugs arrest and were basically told, you don't have to do the time if you work for us. However, the New Yorker was given a quote by narcotics experts that without this process, then the drugs investigations across America would completely collapse. These informants, however, had no training and were being put in increasingly dangerous situations. Dishwa says, I wonder if Silverback are going to release their seminal track, Monkey Lover. Monkey Lover is a phenomenal dance track. I think bringing it back as M Lover might take away some of the fun and the excitement. I must play that for Steve. I must play Monkey Lover for Steve. Steve's now absolutely shitting himself at what the hell I'm going to send him if it's called Monkey Lover. Steve's cancelling returning from his holiday at this point. Anyway, so grand jury testimony revealed that Hoffman carried on selling weed to her friends, as she's been doing, but letting her carry on without any training went very, very badly. For instance, she tried to set up a small-time dealer. Having done the deal, rang him up to tell him, I'm sorry, I'm an informant, and then paid some of his bills as a sorry. She told people she was an informant, even told a police target, and she then started arranging deals that the police had not asked for or knew about or wanted. She was essentially an absolute loose cannon. So obviously what the police decided to do was escalate this vastly. So the police said to her, we want you to take part in a bigger sting. You're getting weed deals. We don't want weed deals. We want some big guns. So they said they put her a plan. This is a plan. They gave her $13,000 in cash to go and buy 1,500 ecstasy pills, 2 ounces of coke, and a gun. This was a huge escalation of anything Hoffman had ever done or ever experienced. She was a college girl that sold a little bit of weed out of her room. She was now being asked to go and buy a gun and an industrial quantity of pills. She was vastly out of her depth, but she felt she had no choice. If she refused, she thought she would be put in prison. Hoffman agreed, and a plan was formed. Thank you, Ditch, for putting that in there. Enjoy the subtle sounds of monkey. No, it is genuinely it's a good song. Send complaints to Ditch. So there were going to be 2 officers. They were going to monitor her. If there was any trouble, they would jump in. And they completely messed it up, obviously. So what should happen is that Hoffman should have made the call arranging the sting, and the police should have arrested the dealers at the location. You are never meant to send somebody with no training with 13 grand in cash into the wild. This plan had only been drawn up on the day, and while they showed it and got approval from their superiors, they got approval because they decided to not mention the fact guns were involved. So Hoffman arrived at the location, a park, but suspects told her they wanted to do the deal in a different location. The location was then changed for a 3rd time. In theory, police should have conveyed the order to back out. In theory, the officer should have maintained contact using the wire she was wearing. In theory, a DEA plane was overhead watching her. Unfortunately, the wire had been incorrectly installed and didn't work. Her phone had moved out of signal range because of the woods and the trees. The plane couldn't see because of the trees, and the officers lost sight of her within 15 minutes of her driving away from the police building. She had no abort message. She was completely alone, and she got into a car with the suspects and they drove off. The suspects had always been planning to steal the money and just give her a bag of aspirin, but as they were moving they found the wire and they shot her dead with the handgun, dumped her body and took the money. Officers initially thought Hoffman had run off with the money and went to her boyfriend's house to find her. It took 2 days to find out what had happened. They arrested the 2 suspects because they knew who they were, and they took them to the corpse. They were 23 and 25 respectively, and had worked together at a car shop until days before the murder, when they were fired. They were charged with first-degree murder. Both were found guilty. Bradshaw received life imprisonment without parole plus 30 years, and Green life. As details emerged, the police came in for criticism, obviously. The Tallahassee police had to admit they'd sent Hoffman into a dangerous situation with no undercover training to meet 2 people unknown to her, to deal with coke and guns beyond anything she'd ever experienced, with incompetent and inadequate support from the police. The officers were suspended but refused to admit any fault. Police Chief Janice Jones called Hoffman a criminal to ABC News. Do we feel responsible? We're responsible for the safety of this community. People we use as confidential informants are people familiar with the drug trade, he said of a woman who had a small amount of weed and they sent to buy guns and got killed. The grand jury, on the other hand, concluded letting a young and mature woman get in a car by herself with $13,000 to meet 2 convicted felons who were bringing a gun was an unconscionable decision. Terrifyingly, Hoffman was lucky she was simply shot to death. Do you remember earlier I said that this was going on hundreds of times all over the place with hundreds of poor people who were being forced into dangerous situations? Kentucky police had recruited LeBron Gaither as a drug informant. They made him testify before a grand jury one day against Jason Knoll, and the next day they sent him to buy drugs from Jason Knoll. Knoll made Gaither disappear, tortured him and killed him by dragging him through the woods by a chain, and then killing what was left of him. Such was the criticism and outrage of Hoffman's fate. On May 7, 2009, Florida adopted Rachel's Law, which absolutely transformed the use of informants so that this would never happen again. Training procedures. Dishwasher says, given what happened to people in the previous story, I guess this streamer was lucky. Yes, and that is the tragic end of Rachel Hoffman, who was essentially betrayed by the police. Right, well, we've run through 4 stories today. I'm not sure everyone's going to go away and sleep happily after this, but I hope you have enjoyed it. If you haven't enjoyed it, now's the time to go, can we please not have any more serial killers cutting men's balls off? Thank you. And I'll listen. Everyone in chat goes, bring on the llamas. Titch was going to hide in my socks, yeah. You do realise, right, for as long as this stream, in the next month, I reckon we've got a month, if Bumsock turns up, I'm going to have to explain this to him, and he is not prepared, is he? He doesn't know he's coming into a true crime stream. He probably thinks I'm just playing. Yes, I suppose Bumsock could be a her, but I'm going to assume it's a guy because it feels like the sort of stupid thing a guy would do. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Tom, for the applause. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. I do. I love doing these things. We took last week off because the DJ channel has launched. A reminder that we have some brilliant musicians in chat. We have Tom Hansen, who is an amazing drummer. We have Cam Warbush, who's an amazing singer. We have the multi-talented Steve Forward, who is an amazing guitarist, pianist, DJ, and tech support wizard. And we have Foxy Harley, who is a variety streamer and DJ. And if I've missed anybody, I apologise. Let me know and I'll give you a shout out. Right, I'm glad you all enjoyed that. Next week we won't do another long grueling serial killer case. We'll do some other things. Not sure what yet. I like the idea of a copycats episode. And of course we have Silverback's Monkey Lover, yes. Yes, obviously if you're watching this back on the VOD, which will be available on YouTube for perpetuity, you will not be able to click the link, but everyone else will now be able to go and listen to Monkey Lover. And if anything was going to change the mood, it's Monkey Lover. The unofficial anthem of the 2025 monkeypox pandemic. I'm very sorry we did not have a Polly sighting. Polly has been up here almost all day. I have repositioned the camera, and as soon as I go live, she sits in the hallway. So I'm sorry about that. I didn't get to use cat cam. Hopefully in the next stream we'll encourage her. Right, we do need a raid. Let me see who's on, unless anybody has any suggestions. The last time Steve made a suggestion for a phenomenally entertaining raid. So if anyone has anything like that, let me know. Or let me see who's on in the. Do you like a good bit of craft? I should probably look at just chatting because I'm a just chatter, but let's see who's on in craft. Let's see if there's anyone whose day we can make in craft. There's a guy here. There's a lady here with her 2-year stream anniversary, and she's got a cat. How do we feel? or we could scroll right down and see who's not got many viewers, but who's doing some good stuff. Da-da, da-da. Vivi is live with one viewer. Yes, good call. Right, we are going to go to Vivilaine Rooson, who is doing some Pokemon diorama display stuff. Good call, Ditch. Let's go and see Vivi. Alright, thank you everybody. I love doing these and I can only do it with you. Yes, I'll try. Right, I promise next time it won't be as gruesome. Sadly, to really cross the genre of true crime, you do have to do a few gruesome ones. But we won't do that next week. We'll do something else. Thanks so much. Alright everybody, thanks for a great night. I will see you when I see you. I will be careful where I set my socks. Yeah. Right, we are raiding now. Take care everybody. Prepare to change tone entirely for something much more wholesome.